Welcome to the Story and Critique Show. This is a workshop experience unlike any other, where you and writers from the community can submit your stories, and I will do a live reading and critiques to help you really improve your story and take it to the next level. I accept submissions and genres that from any of the following. I have fantasy, sci-fi, thriller, romance. We have novels and short stories, scripts, and sometimes we even receive poems. So if you want to listen in on some stories written by other writers, or you're wanting your story read, you're going to want to stick around because we have some great submissions set up for today. All right. So thank you for joining. And I'm your host, Kauffman. I'm on a mission to help show the world that the entire process of creative writing is and always will be fun. And by the way, if you're watching on the replay, I've got you covered. I'm going to add the timestamps after the stream ends, so that way you can hop ahead to the part of the video that brings you the most value. Whether you want to go back and listen to your critique for a story reading I did, or you just want to listen to a story that like really stood out to you again. I got you. Okie dokie. So we got that all squared away. And let me hop into the comments. Oh, looks like we got all the crew. John, welcome to the chat. We got Marta. It's a song title. I'm not. And then we got John Deeds from Twitch. John, thanks for joining us as well, my man. By the way, John, if you have any creative writing stories, always feel free to send them over if you need an excerpt of anything. Welcome, welcome. And then Isabella, welcome to the stream. Welcome, my friends, and Atomic Elf in the house. So, as I learned from last week's stream, I'm still going to do a daily writing sprint. I tried to do it at the end of yesterday's or at the end of last week's show, and it just doesn't work out well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off the top of the show with our live writing sprint. Now I'm going to do a 20-minute writing sprint, and you're more than welcome to join me. If you want to get some writing done yourself, let's say maybe you're feeling super creative this weekend and you're like, okay, I can get into the mindset, I can get into the mojo. Or you can just sit back and relax as I write a very intense scene in Last Scarecrow. Whew, my goodness, what up? Oof, that scene yesterday was quite a doozy, let me tell you. And if, as a note and a reminder, if you want your story read, whether you want like an excerpt or you want me to do a reading or a critique, make sure you send the story to the email listed below, thecreativeghostwriter@gmail.com. Also throw that in the comments as well. Thecreativeghostwriter@gmail.com. Awesome. And I generally will add stories based in the, or I will do the readings based in the order that I receive them. So make sure you send that in so I can try to get it on today's stream. Yes, Atomic, I got your free ride as well. By the way, I'm like super excited for yours. Yours was being able to do a reading of a free write from our previous AI show. So stoked. I'm eager to see how it came out. Beautiful. So I'm going to queue up our daily writing sprint. So we're going to do 20 minutes, super easy, very casual. And then after the writing sprint, we'll hop into our readings for the day. Perfect. And nothing says writing sprint without our very own playlist, Atomic Elf Mix number 2. All right, there we go. I got my story pulled up. Chapter. So if you didn't tune into yesterday, let's say I want to say this was what's this chapter is an airtight escape. Scarecrow's, let's see, Scarecrow's ability consequences. There we go. That way we can get a little bit of the recap from what's going on with my story today. So that's where I'm at with Last Scarecrow. If you were here yesterday, it was a crazy sprint, let me tell you. It was a crazy sprint for me. I wrote, like, when you're working on a sprint and you get really into it, like, oof, man, it was a good scene. I think I'm about 70% of the way in. Okay, I'm eager to get started, so I'm going to throw up the music. We got 20 minutes on the clock. And it's time to write now. what's up, Dave? Welcome to the stream, my friend. We're just wrapping up a writing sprint, and then we're actually going to be doing some story readings and critiques. So stick around. We got some really cool stories to go through today. Really good, by the way. Really, really good. Thanks for asking. I've been working on like some really intense scenes. Hey, what's up, Silent? Welcome back, my friend. Welcome, welcome. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. I hope the writing is treating both of y'all well. Perfect. I think that's an excellent place to leave on. Oh man. Whew. All right, and that marks. I guess I should shouldn't drop the volume before the sound effect. There we go. End of writing sprint. Wow, let me tell you, with where I'm at in Last Scarecrow, I am at such an intense part of the story. I'm not quite yet at the Dark Night of the Soul moment or that climax where that's a little bit in the future. I would say right now, for those of you who are super aware of story structure, I'm probably around the end of Act 2. I'm probably at let's see, my midpoint was a low point when Crow died. That was a low point. And then my high point was probably this moment is actually going to be a high point of sorts. So we're actually like at the very end of Act 2 right now. And let me tell you, it's crazy. We had the last Scarecrow who had to make a bargain with the witches, with the hags, because they need to resurrect Quilt, which is a flying carpet essentially, because it was shared with him early in the story that Quilt's the only one who knows the location of a magic to defeat the first demon and the nothingness. So during this like bargain, the Scarecrow made a bargain with the witches, with the hags, and they shared that the secret was actually he who had the ability to do so. So he tried to attempt to bring the quilt back to life, but in doing so, he doesn't know what he's doing. And whatever ability that he did, the same thing we saw during the Crow midpoint, blew up the entire world in a thing of light. And not only did Crow start, not Crow, but not only did Quilt start beaming with light, all of the characters in the area, the hags, the pixie, the snake, the grizzly bear, and even skunk in the distance, all started blowing up with like beams of light. And now we're kind of seeing what's happening as Scarecrow's once again thrown back into this. It's kind of like a dream-ish scape, which we've witnessed twice before in with the Last Robot and with Crow. So fun stuff. I'm super excited. All right, well, we'll get to continue on that writing sprint tomorrow. Yeah, it's a pretty cool look, putting the stocking cap away. And by the way, Dave, let's see. I'm going to turn my iPen story into a film short. That is so exciting. That is absolutely incredible. And by the way, if you guys didn't catch, I want to say a couple of days ago, Dave was here in the chat, and we came up with this really cool story for like an iPen, and we were kind of like brainstorming on it. And I'm just super excited that you're going to turn that into a story. Like that's what the creative process is all about. Getting really cool ideas from either like collaborations or from just like talking with other writers. So I'm really proud of you. I'm eager to see how it shapes up. Definitely let us imagine get ooh, good for you. That's exciting. Definitely like keep us updated. Let us know how the process goes. Silent, it's good to have you back in the stream, my friend. Hopefully school isn't beating you up too badly. Okay, let's say Tom is like, is it an iPen? Good question. Okay, so writing sprint aside, it's time for our live story reading and critique show. I hope you are ready because I am ready. We got some great stories lined up for today. All right, I got to bear with me while I adjust my screen. Okie dokie. And by the way, while I'm setting this up, if you want let's see, I'll throw this back up. If you want your story read, you want an excerpt of it read and or critiqued, make sure to send that excerpt to the email listed below, the creativeghostwriter@gmail.com. Bear with me. There we go. as I might freeze up a little bit as I'm switching gears over here. So it looks like our first story, Soul, I got yours first up. Soul, I got the journal. By the way, Soul, if you're in the stream, say something in the comments. Say something in the comments. Just say here. And I got your story coming up as I pull it up. The journal. Excellent. Perfect. And essentially what I'm doing is I'm just resetting my screen so that way there's a better view for you as I'm going through the story and submission process. Bear with me un momento. All right, and I think this is good. Okay. Perfect. And then let me remove this and present. All right, and we are all set up here. Beautiful. So as I'm getting into this, first let me throw this up. So you're aware, essentially, let me explain this real quick. So essentially the way this process works out is writers can submit their stories to me at any time, either during or after the show. They get added to the following Saturday's reading session. I then do a reading and a critique. Now, each session, I set a timer for 20 minutes. I need to be really good. I need to be better about sticking to the timer so I can get through more stories. I split it between 10 minutes of reading and 10 minutes of critique. Absolutely. And then I format it in a way so that way you can read along with me. I've also listed some critique guidelines in terms of like what I'm looking for during the critique. If you see me highlighting as I'm reading, doesn't mean anything good or bad. It's generally just a reminder for myself on things to touch upon when I get back to the critique portion of it. And I absolutely encourage you, if there's anything you see that like really stands out, whether it's like a part of the story you really like or something you think that could be improved upon, feel free to drop it in the comments. Absolutely. Join the discussion. It's always so cool when you put your story out there and you get feedback that's going to actually help you grow the story. So we're all going into this experience with the mindset that any feedback is designed to help you be a better writer, because our goal is to help you elevate your skill and to get your story published so we can put out to the world, have people read our messages, and hopefully make some money. Okay, perfecto. And by the way, if you want to support me, buy me a coffee. It's a free tipping thing at buymeacoffee.com at The Creative Ghost. Feel free. That's like my the tipping feature I have set up right now. So that's easy way to support me if you enjoy the stream or anything in the future, as my writing business is my main source of income. Okay, so let's hop into Soul's journey and story. Beautiful. And let me pull up the comments. Let's see, I gotta format this in a way that works. Perfect. All right, perfecto. So let's say I have my camera over here and I got this here, so that way y'all can see. Let's see. Let me just check the comments real quick. All the new pens, is it an iPen? John, all the new pens are Illuminati government spy pens. Dave, I think you got some other, I think whenever you're here, we're always getting some good ideas. So that way this like story that sounds like you're now getting produced, it's going to like win the award circuit, I'm sure, once it's all filmed. That is so cool. Awesome. So you're here. Beautiful. Let's see. Do you try to make sure people John, do you try to make sure people are here when you read their work? So that's a great question. I've gone back and forth on if having the person here is a requirement, because these streams work really well as a replay value as well. I usually ask a writer when I start the reading if they're here, because it gives them the opportunity to ask questions during the reading. But if they're not here, that doesn't limit me from doing the reading and critique. It just means that essentially they'll go back and they'll watch it on the replay, because a lot of the times what I've realized is about 70% of this audience is here in the US and 30% is abroad. So like from the international audience, for people in like the UK or Australia or India, it's probably like late for them. And a lot of times they're not able to make it. So I want to make this as accessible for creative writers around the world, which is why I don't require them to be here when I do the reading. By the way, Atomic said, buy me a coffee doesn't require you to set up any account to donate either. Woohoo! That's awesome. I'm actually like newer to the platform, so that's really cool. You don't even have to set up an account to buy me a coffee. Let's see, Atomic helped me out with that with his iPad. And absolutely Poland. And I should have said European countries. Like Marta, we got to represent Poland over here. Okay, so the journal, I'm all set on my end, and okay. And let's do this a little differently. So I'm going to try this format for the reading, and then I'll blow up the text when I do the format itself. So hold on, I want to close out. You don't need that. I want to make sure. Perfect. I've been like really working on trying to improve this so we don't get any lag. And let's turn off Grammarly. We do not need Grammarly right now. Okay. So I'm going to try this for the reading itself, and then I'll blow up the document when I do the critique. Okay. So the journal, let me get to my pen. Wonderful. And by the way, if I'm like super excited about reading your story, Soul. If you've joined in on previous shows, a lot of Soul's stories have been from, or a lot of the excerpts have been from Soul's story from the Pirate series, which has been so cool. And I've been like super excited about it. And now this is an excerpt. I think this is like an excerpt within an excerpt. So definitely feel free to drop a comment if you want to add any further explanation. Okay, so I got 20 minutes on the clock. The Journal by Soul Macnamara. April 13th, 27:32. Today, I noticed something. The uppers are always watching, always present, always making sure we're keeping up on our skills. It's terrifying. There was an accident today, and as much as I don't want to remember it, I can't let myself forget because of what happened. That's why I requisitioned this journal. FJ234 was on a high beam for balance and above air travel practice, but she fell and broke her arm and her leg. Not the first time this has happened, but rarely do the felines ever get hurt like that. Maybe her gear was too heavy. Maybe she was sick. But she got the worst injuries we've seen in a long time. Instead of administering the usual care, they dragged her out by her tail, and after a while, we all heard the sound of a gunshot. They didn't realize how acute our hearing is, but all of us heard it. It echoed a long way from beyond where we're allowed. She isn't coming back, and the humans don't care. April 23rd. No one's talked about her in days. The others say that we can't do anything. So why bring it up? But why can't I let myself forget her? Soldiers getting hurt isn't a new thing. Broken legs, bent tails, missing things, ripped ears. All of that's been happening since the beginning. We all know that. But why is this affecting me now? I didn't really know her. Canines and felines only mix during training. But during mess, we tend to sit with our own species. The others all give blank stares when I ask about her, but no one answers me. April 30th. I need to learn to keep my mouth shut. There was another accident. WS2834 was told to face UGB583, but that wasn't fair. He was barely the size of his opponent's arm, and I spoke out. I knew I shouldn't have, but I did. I was forced to wear a muzzle for 3 days. I wasn't allowed to take it off either. Not to eat or sleep. I managed to get some food through the holes, but it just clogged it up and made it messy. Ugh. I also couldn't smell very well when that happened, so I got reprimanded in tracking mode. This happens sometimes. A canine wearing a muzzle, but I've never seen anyone wear one for so long. Maybe the other wings have that happen too. Moon 11th. I couldn't help it. I had to speak out. I know they'll wait until dark to get me, but it was worth it. FT149 was in pain, a claw rip in her arm. It was bleeding everywhere. No one came to help. I asked the only human there who I knew would help, Alicia, but she got in trouble. Ugh. They told her it wasn't serious, but I could see bone through the blood, and the gash ran from wrist to above her elbow. She had a hard time moving it without blood pumping out, and the only thing I could do was rip up my own shirt to staunch the bleeding as best as I could. After I got her to the side of our practice room, I told the melee instructor she needed care, but he brushed me off, told me that since I got it wrapped up, even though it was dripping blood all over the floor, she was fine. I bared my fangs at him, and he said nothing to me. But one of the uppers showed up a few minutes later. They rarely come out from their special rooms where they sit and watch us. When an upper comes in, either someone's being picked up for the breeder program or someone's in trouble. They didn't say anything to us, but everyone knew. Yeah, they were watching me. And when we left the floor, I heard the upper ask where my Ken was. Moon 18th. I'm glad I hid this journal. They came in the middle of the night, held my jaw shut, and stuck me with something. I spent 4 days in a strange room, all white, no smells, no doors, nothing. I couldn't hear anything but myself. They didn't come back until the 4th day, and that was when I found out how long I had been in there, and told me that we are there to just do our jobs, that we are replaceable. If one of us dies, they have 12 more they can pick from. I won't lie. I vomited on their shoes at that. They struck me with some kind of stick, like a short metal staff, but I could smell the electricity in it. My muzzle still hurts, and the fur hasn't grown back yet. Some of the others asked why I came back, but I'm not allowed to tell them. The uppers told me that if I do, they won't bother bringing me back next time. Ost 2nd. I haven't been able to record anything because they watch me all the time. I feel like I'm going crazy. Ost 7th. I've been losing weight, and the instructors noticed. I got reprimanded for wasting food, but if I make myself eat, I just throw it back up. Ost 14th. Alicia came to me. She was sent by the uppers to make sure I'm not sick, but she says she has a plan to get us out. There are others in other parts of the compound that are like me, not other canines, not wolves, but she said they were aware, whatever that means. Can she get us out? If she can, I want to believe her. I don't trust the humans, but if it means getting out, I'll trust just this one. Sept 15th. Alicia finally came back. I'm glad. I'm glad I made myself eat, made myself learn every skill that they want us to know. She says we leave next month. I hope so. Another soldier died today. RR3821. I didn't know him well, but one of the felines snapped his neck in practice. A rat? Against a tiger? What were the uppers thinking? If Alicia can get us out, she says we can start a new life. She met someone from the outside. The outside? Who can help us get us somewhere safe. I wonder what the outside's like. I've only heard of trees and grass, of stars and the moon, because Alicia's been sneaking to tell me. I know the colors, but not what they look like when it's not our uniforms or beds or rations. When I write next, we'll be out. I hope. Alki, 29th. I never imagined the world was so big. I'm sitting in something called a shack, a kind of tent, but more permanent. The material that it's made from isn't like metal or the wood we had in the compound. It's rough and splintery, but it smells alive somehow. There's no antiseptic, no gunpowder, no humans. Oh, that's the most shocking thing. Eve, the one who's helping us. She's a wolf. She was born in the compound like us, but somehow rescued her when she was a pup. She grew up out here and wants to show us what the world is like. But not everyone made it. Alicia stayed behind to buy us time. She said she would join us, but I know she won't. I think she knew it too. And some of us got scared and stayed behind, too afraid of the outside to come out here. But there's 10 of us left, enough to start our lives together because of how we were made. We can have children if we want, have them grow up better than we did. And it doesn't matter that not one of us is the same species. We won't die out. Eve told us that the humans made us easy to reproduce, so they could throw us away and replace us like we were nothing. But now we can live without their rules. We can start our own society, as Eve says. We can live like the humans do, but better. And we can choose our own names. I want to remember Alicia, so I chose Alistair. It starts the same way. She was a human, but she was kind. She showed us that some humans do care. But I'm leaving this journal behind. Maybe someday someone will find this and read it and learn where we came from. And learn what monsters are. End reading. Man. Oh, wow. So that was a really good story. That was a really good story excerpt. I was immediately pulled in to the to your use of interiority. As I think about the strengths of it that stood out from an initial reading, I would say I absolutely loved the world building. I really loved that. It felt unique and it felt fun. Let's see. You said this first draft of the novella for Animal Instincts. Incredible. So I love the use of the world building, and this almost seems like first draft. This almost kind of seems like it's like a prelude to the story that you're about to set up, and it's really interesting. I could almost see this as like a prologue. I know. I think you had shared that you were thinking about putting this out as like not an ad, but it's kind of like to build up hype maybe. But this is a really cool excerpt. I love the use of interiority. I think posing it as a journal entry was very, very well done. So I would say the strengths would be world building, and the structure of it actually works very, very well for this story. Yeah, especially the prisoner mentality. That's absolutely incredible. I felt like I was engaged in the plot that you were setting up with this character, with this animal type character. I think if I recall, I'm pretty sure the character was a dog. I'm pretty sure the character was a canine, as you had referenced. And you know what was funny? When I was reading the titling of it for the different dates, I thought you had misspelled the dates incorrectly on the reading because you're like April 13th. You went from April to Moon. And then by the time I got to like the second or third April, I'm like, okay, it's intentional. It's an intentional animal choice. Oh. Okay. All right. So let me pull up this and let's dig into it. Let's see what I got here. By the way, I think this is a really great comment, John. This is a good example of throwing out story puzzle pieces that get put together later. 100% agreed. This is a perfect example of foreshadowing. I think this is like a very early foreshadowing. And so there's so many things that you can touch upon that I'm like, all right, these are probably going to come back later, right? You have like the prisoners, the concept of the humans, the other animals, the pain, the torturing, so to speak, the muzzles. You do a really good job of setting up a lot of very interesting things. Let's see. And so you're saying this is a novella that is technically a translation of a journal that Bree finds in the later parts of Animal Instincts. This will be offered for free when Animal Instincts releases. He's a gray wolf. Okay, awesome. He is a wolf. That you might have said that. I forgot if I missed that or not. So okay, so let's start from the beginning. So I think the biggest opportunities. Let me make sure you guys can see this. Okay. So I think right now the biggest opportunities, I think while the world building works and it works for this like excerpt, I alluded but never outright said it on purpose. Okay, so it was intentional. Perfect. How do I feel about that? I guess okay, so this is the question that I would pose to you. So you did a good job of alluding to a lot of things. Why save the precedent that this character is a wolf? Unless if it isn't an intentional choice for the plot itself. The reason being is because I want to get into the story. I'm invested in the plot and I'm invested in the world building. But in terms of this protagonist, for at least this excerpt, I think I'm not clear on this specific character's character development, so to speak. And what that means is because I'm not sure what type of animal he is, other than that he's muzzled, right? So some type of canine, I actually assumed he was a dog. I think it makes it hard for me to, and this purely as a reader, hard for me to want to connect with this character because this character is intentionally left vague. Now, what's interesting, and I think this is actually the same opportunity that you can do with the word choice. So you intentionally have the titling, you intentionally you intentionally change the spelling for the months, which is actually interesting. I really like that. But then throughout this excerpt, the months are the only thing that are not mislabeled, but spelled as if it's coming from like an animal or a different point of view. I think what I would want to see is would want to see more instances of things intentionally misspelled or more references for this animal, because it feels like this type of misspelling is only done for the titles or for the dates, but then it's not done for any of the journal entries itself. So I think that would just be one recommendation. Like I think what would work is I think if you picked you could go two ways. You could either pick X amount of letters, like pick like 3 to 4 letters, which like you could intentionally misspell, or pick X amount of words that you can misspell, but not so it's intentional. It is absolutely intentional. And I think it would almost be interesting for to reference that intentionality of the misspelling itself of like, I can never spell this right or something like that. Even if that was just like a sentence, because it pulls us into this specific character. Right now, the focus of this is on the plot, and I think I want a little more of the character development of who this character is. And I think also because I don't really get a name either. Today I noticed some of the uppers are always watching. It's terrifying. I'm not I almost feel like that, like, even if I don't get a name, like, this character should be referenced by, like, a number. Like, today I noticed something, and maybe you did, I'm not sure if I missed it, but because you reference all the other, animals as numbers, it feels like this character's number should be, like they should be referenced by a specific number, so that's how we know them as. I think that would actually be really interesting. Even if you signed off the end of like What if you like signed it off and learned what monsters are, signed F2346 or whatever you want to do. Let's see. I alluded but never outright. Yep. Let's see. Yep. I know you said you alluded but never said it on purpose. The books are mysteries, and I wanted to slowly draw people in and make them guess. Their names, UGB is Ursine, Grizzly Bear, for example. Yeah, and I think I'm fine with that. I actually don't think you really need to reveal the names of the other characters. I actually think the use of numbers is very clever. I think that's a great way. I think that the only thing when you have a series of numbers by referencing all the characters is you have to find a way that each number has to stand out, right? So if a character is F23619, how does that number stand out from the other number? I'd kind of have to think. I'd have to think about that. The reason being is otherwise, the reader's not necessarily going to remember the differentiation between the different numbers. But because this is used more as kind of like an intrigue piece than part of the story itself, that's not necessarily like a hard set. It's almost like the numbers are kind of used as like you said, as a hook to lure them in. So I'm not opposed to the numbering of the other characters. I think it's really just I need more distinctions for this protagonist who's writing the story. And you can go about it in any number of ways. But I think the distinctions, if I were working on it, I would say the distinctions I would try would be, like I said earlier, word choice. Because at times it almost read like a human, but I went back and forth. I'm like, you can actually you can get away with that. I think I just wanted more references that this character is a wolf. Because even like if you hadn't have said it was a wolf, I don't think I would have known. And all the foreshadowing for all the elements in it is so well done that I don't think that you need to hold that back for the character itself. I don't think you need to hold back a couple of the details on that the character is either a wolf or that the character is some type of creature, or giving maybe the character a nickname. A good foreshadowing technique is give this character a nickname that in the story, the character is referenced by something else, and then it can be tied together later on. But I think we just need we need to be better grounded in this specific character. Because right now, if the reader reads it, they'll care because the plot is interesting. I want them to care because the plot is interesting and because they feel for the character as well. And what happens to the character is like what happens to the character sucks. Like it's the characters, nobody wants to have the feeling of being put in a cage, right? And I think it's just I think it'll just be a matter of fine tuning and tweaking some of the language to clarify who this character is specifically. And I actually I don't think that would be super difficult. Yeah, I think that was really my biggest piece. I think that was really my biggest recommendation, because like I didn't really have too much on the minor edits for it. Like overall, so like it was really well written. And I just want to say I'm really impressed because the over thing flowed very, very well. You could literally put this out right now and it works as a standalone story. My recommendations would be just to elevate it to fine tune things that are already working. So really great work. This makes me want to read the story. This makes me want to read the Animal Instincts. Like I feel like I'm in some type of like I don't know, like maybe like a future, maybe it's a post-apocalyptic world with humans and animals. Like, I love animals, especially with Last Scarecrow. So, and then John asked a great question. I almost want to get answers like, who are the uppers? Yep. Right. And that tells me that you're posing great clues and great hints. Right. I want to remember Alicia. And I like that he chose his name at the end. I like that he chose his name as Alistair. I like that. Oh, that's so cool. Really great work, Soul. And by the way, that ending and learn what monsters are, great ending for it. Works very, very well. Yeah, actually, as this is a side thought, because it ends off on the monster idea, I think if you started the first entry with the character thinking about that concept of monsters and them either believing that they themselves are a monster, or doing something that touches upon monster, will actually make it stronger because it'll tie that overall concept together. And if you tie them believing that they themselves are a monster or whatever's happening to them is monstrous, um, it'll immediately tie your reader into that character, because nobody wants to be a monster, but we find monsters interesting to read about. So just a subjective recommendation. Awesome. Yeah, really, really great work. So thank you for sharing that. That was really cool. That was a cool story. I always get so excited when I get to check out different types of storytelling from each of you in the community, because it kind of shows your range, and whether or not like you're just working on like a fantasy or sci-fi or romance or something in between. It shows our capability to write in different formats. And if there's one thing that I love writing in different styles. I love doing both novels and scripts. I love balancing the two. I do short stories, but I've learned that a lot of times I prefer the longer form because I like to really dive into the characters, the world, and expand the story. Excellent. So really great work, Soul. That was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for sharing. Yes. And then Soul shared, yes, a future without humans, and throws overthrew them sometime after this. Ooh, don't we love that post-apocalyptic concept? Love it. Thank you again, Soul. I appreciate you. All right. So what do we got next? Reading to the Jumboree. Ketan, I got you on deck, my friend. Come up. Just let me know if you're here in the comments. The Jumboree. So if you've been joining along, you know that we've actually read a couple excerpts of this story. Now, one of the things that I really appreciate about you, Ketan, is that you've taken the recommendations, you've taken the feedback, and then you come and you make it better and you keep improving on it. And that is part of the storytelling process of, like, regardless of where it's at, listening to some feedback. Because remember, we don't always have to listen to all feedback. We're the authors of our own stories. We get to choose that, pick and choose. But seeing you taking some of the feedback that we've shared is so cool, and seeing like the story grow and grow over time. So it's definitely been my honor to help you out over the process. All right, perfecto. All right, and let me pull up your story and reset the timer. All right, perfect. And I am set here. All right, so if you've been joining us, you know that we've been working on we've gone through the first couple excerpts of this story. And we actually left off on an interesting cliffhanger the last time we touched upon this. All right, so let's get into it. We're going to dig down a little bit as I find my place. And I want to say I think we're about halfway. Perfect. Okay, and I remember the two girls. Perfect. Okay. So if you've been reading along or paying attention previously, I want to say with where we're at this point in the story, let me see. So there was we had a couple of characters. We had Yudi, and then we had the two drunkards, his other two friends, basically fight off some monsters. Not Yudi, but the two other characters. I blanked on their names. Dee and Shawshank. Two of the girls who ran from the village were captured by two random characters, and they fled. They ran into the jungle, and in the jungle, they were captured by a group of like robed hooded figures, and the robed hooded figures basically walked into a portal with them. So let's see. Let's see. These Saturdays are definitely going to be up there your most popular live streams. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. By the way, John, I actually really appreciate that. What's interesting is of my live stream format, the podcast interview is actually proven to be the most popular. the podcast. So I think the weekends are definitely shaping up to be a little bit more engaging in terms of Saturdays is the story and critique show, while Sunday is the Creative Right Now podcast. So yeah, they're definitely shaping up. My goal is to make every day an experience eventually. So super exciting. Okay, so I am all ready. And let me get my pen, make sure I got the highlighter. Okay. All right, I got 20 minutes on the clock. All right. The Jumboree. The air was thick with the scent of spices, fruits, etc., from the market as the vendors just packed up their wares and mingled with the faint aroma of medicinal herbs wafting from the hakims when Dee and Shawshank reached there. Rudra, a hakim, an Ayurvedic medicine practitioner of Trishulgat, had just finished the medical care to the townsmen who were injured in the attack earlier. The Hakim's was a multi-purpose haberdashery as well as a hospital. Handled by Rudra and his employees. The name of the premise was after the hereditary profession of Rudra. He was quite a knowledgeable doctor and potion maker. However, he was reluctantly practicing medicines just to take ahead his father's legacy. Rudra was much interested in business and lavish lifestyle. Therefore, he developed his luxurious establishment, the Hakim's. Dee and Shawshank decided to settle nearby a bonfire outside the haberdashery as it was getting colder. The weather here generally remains colder as it is located near the Himalayas. Even summers in Trishulgat are colder at nights. There were other people also, some townsmen, some travelers, and artists from different territories of the empire relishing some of the Hakim's famous delicacies. Although the wounds were nothing on Dee and Shawshank's sinewy bodies, they did not want to contract any infections, and therefore they poured some liquor on the scars and cuts so as to nurse them, which they got in the recent encounter with the magic creatures. Both were enjoying their sumptuous repast and had already gulped a flagon of liquor. May I join the heroes of the day? Asked Rudra and continued. I heard how you fought with the weird creatures and killed them. It will be a great honor to join and serve such heroes. No, no, no. It will be our honor if the Hakim himself joins the people like us, replied Dee with pleasure and demanded with another flagon in loosened tongue. Hey, 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 slow it down, Dee. We have already drunk however much our pockets allowed. Every day logging in a sawmill doesn't earn us an exorbitant booze, interrupted Shawshank. Wow, thank you for making me recall who I am, grimaced Dee and continued. Well, now you tell me, what should I do if I want to drink more? Well, I can manage it, but it would be a little bit warmer. if you don't mind, replied Shawshank, and Rudra and whoever around heard that burst. And Rudra and whoever around heard that burst into laughter with Shawshank. You scoundrel! Keep your filthy piss inside you, you son of a dog! Dee burst with anger and pounced on Shawshank. Shawshank kept laughing and said, "Don't bring my father in between us! Benchot! At least not respect that thing, that he is no more among us. Otherwise it may so not happen that he will fall from somewhere in the sky and thrust his walking stick into where you know without any lubricant." Hey, don't fight, you both, intervened Rudra, and unraveled the mystery behind the bustle in the haberdashery. You can ask for anything available in the name of the king. Tonight, everything is free. After all, this is the king's treat. Why do you think the haberdashery is jam-packed? These words brought a happy smile on Dee's face, and finally he got what he wanted. But this time, knowing about the treat, he ordered all the fancy decanters of liquor, and pouring a tumbler full, he thrust it up in the air and screamed, "To the king, then!" "To the king!" reciprocated the rest around, and bottoms up. After that toast, no one stopped drinking. People were partaking of spicy roasted pork and beef with different types of tomato, onion, and pumpkin chutneys. Dee and Shawshank were indulged in eating as well, where Rudra left both to themselves and went to look after other guests. Suddenly, something caught Shawshank's attention, and he gestured Dee. Snippets of conversation floated around them like errant wisps of smoke. "You know, our emperor is a very gentle and courteous person, and we are fortunate to have such a ruler," said a man sitting at a table beside the duo. I know, but," agreed the other man, ordering a flagon of liquor, and continued, "but you know what? Our king is a content man from every aspect, and that dulls his cognitive abilities, like rusted iron, very fragile and vulnerable. He can be manipulated easily, even though he has no prince, yet to be coronated after him. He is at least worried. How can he be so happy alongside being a king? And do you think such a man would be even worried about the recent disappearances of spinsters from the adjacent village?" "Hey, man, calm down. You are too loud to bring wrath upon us. There are royal guards here, and if they hear us, they will rip us apart," said the man who started the conversation, in suppressed voice with a tinge of anger. Shawshank and Dee exchanged a meaningful look, silently agreeing to delve deeper into the matter. The man continued further. "Maybe you are right, but I beseech, may it be not so. Our king will definitely do something in the matter. And what do you think about Lord Chandak, the newly exalted commander of the royal army, the son of the king's hand? Tales of his prowess in battle spread like wildfire, and his strength is unmatched by anyone. Yet, alongside his martial prowess lurked rumors of eccentricity, of strange things done in shadows." "Stop taking his name. You were scared of the royal guard before same time, and now you are talking about the Rakshas, devil incarnate," the other man said, swallowing in horror. He rolled his eyes around and continued in a hushed voice. "You know, Verbhadra, the king's hand and Chandak's father, is known for his kindness. But his son, on the other hand, is weird, completely opposite to his father. There are latent discussions about him, especially these days when he has grown blasphemous and stopped going to the ancient Shiva temple for prayers." "I think you are right. He is really a gruesome man. I also heard that he has beheaded 3 of his best men recently for just looking into his eyes. We should not talk about him. May Lord Shiva shower his grace upon us." The man ended the conversation. First, the disappearance of 2 spinsters from the adjacent village during the celebration. And now, the magic animals in our town, and 2 other girls are missing. Strange. Are these happenings connected in any way? Thought Shawshank. "Hey, Dee, come with me," said Shawshank. "Where? I'm still eating, man," asked Dee. "To hell with your eating! Didn't you hear them?" "Yes, I did, but What can we do? We don't even know the girls. D, you don't understand. This is serious. 2 other girls are also missing from our town, too. I heard some people talking about that when we arrived here. If the king is not interested or he doesn't care about this yet, we should do something at least. Oh, I don't know that, but what will we do? Asked Dee, confused. You come with me. I think these men might know something more, but are reluctant to talk here due to the fear. Shashank and Dee went to the common lavatory and waited, as they knew that one of the men who drank hard was going to come over there to piss. Soon the man came, and Dee held him from behind, and Shashank put a dagger on the man's throat. Spit out everything you know about the missing girls, threatened Dee. I don't know anything. I don't know anything. It is only that I heard that 2 girls are missing from the village, Tunpa, shuddered the horrifying man. I think he doesn't know much. Leave him. He has pissed his pants. Shashank to Dee. The man fled from there in panic. Look, we need to do something before the fear spreads to the town. Fear is always bigger than the danger itself, said Shashank. I know, man, but we don't have much information. Perhaps we could pry into Chandak's life as these 2 men were talking weird things about him, suggested Dee. I don't think so, Dee. We don't know much about Chandak. What these men were talking might only be rumors, said Shashank in disagreement. I think we should tell all this to Yudi. He is the only man with power and wisdom to fight against the invisible threat. Dee came with another suggestion. Shashank immediately agreed. You are right, and asked, but where the hell is he? I haven't seen him for a long time. So have I, but I know where he would be, replied Dee thoughtfully. Let's see. All right. And that brings us to about the 10-minute mark. So I'm going to end the reading there so I can go through critique. I wanted to make sure that I hit the end of a reading portion or of a story beat. Okay. Awesome. So Ketan, first off, thank you so much for sharing that. It's actually really interesting being able to see kind of how the plot is moving forward. I think what I continue to love about your writing is you have this very specific word choice and you have a unique style that works well to your writing. The plot is very interesting, right? You have these you have these characters, you have Shashank, Dee, and Yudi, which are the heroes, are basically have this kind of like magic abilities. Yudi, not sure if he has magic, but Shashank and Dee do. And you can tell that the plot is them going to hopefully save these girls from these crazy, weird robed guys who can walk through portals. I'm like, I love portal magic. So I think that's actually really interesting. I think the scene that we just went through, we're doing a lot of setup, right? We're doing a lot of setup for the next section. And we're also kind of at that point in a story where it's like, okay, time to solve the mystery as the heroes have to go figure out like, okay, well, what do we do? So I think that was really interesting and that's what I love. Let's dig into it. Let's see. Yeah, so let's see. I know John, it looks like you had a couple comments in there. That definitely agree. I think Katana, I think there's definitely a number of line edits that could definitely help clean up the overall sentence structure of it, which I just like don't have enough time to go into during a critique. But essentially there's a lot of, let's start off with like the easy structural things. So in terms of technicalities, where let's necromancy, if you're calling it a day. I'm gonna make sure I get back to my place. Perfect. So I want to say that there's a lot of easy technicalities, things that can be cleaned up. You have dialogue, by the way. Once again, all dialogue, quotation marks. You always want to use quotation marks. Otherwise, it throws the reader off. Quotation marks is the industry standard for any story you read for dialogue. If a character says something, it should be in dialogue, not or no, it should be dialogue. It should be in quotation marks, not apostrophes. So that's one easy thing. Now, in terms of the structure, I think there's a couple of like sentence structures throughout that I would recommend adjusting. But it's a little too much for me to dig into during the live critique itself. From an overall look or from an overall recommendation, I think the structure of the scene. So I like you. We have really three sections to this. We have D, Shawshank, and Rudra kind of setting up like, oh, this is the party we're about to go into. We have the party scene itself with the two random guys and D and Shawshank overhearing. And then we have the third section with D and Shawshank starting this like interrogation to be like, oh, what's going on? Now, I think I really liked the first and the third section. D and Shawshank and Rudra, I think that was good. I actually liked your setup with Rudra. And he's kind of set up as like the medical practitioner. I think that was definitely really a really good call. I think Rudra is interesting, kind of setting him up as like the healer of the entire town. So after the profession, let's see. And basically you could tell that Rudra's like character goal is that he's wants to basically probably impress his father since he's taking over the father's business. So I think Rudra's character goal is clear. I'm curious if Rudra is going to be a predominant character in the story. If he's going to come back in the story, Ketan, keep it as is. If he's not, I would probably actually shorten his description as his character doesn't feel like it might not be that important. But if he comes back later on in the story and is going to be a bigger character, then keep it as is. Because right now you want the focus to be on D and Shawshank as character development because they're really interesting characters. Decided, and you have them fighting. D and Shawshank are basically arguing over the liquor. That's fun. I join the heroes of the day. This is a good setup. I heard how you fought. No. I like this. Hey, slow it down, D. We have already drunk. However much our pockets allowed. I would what I would do is in terms of the dialogue, I would just clean up. I would go back and just read aloud the part of their conversation where Shawshank and D are fighting, or where they start to fight. I think some of the dialogue, it was just a little I know what you were going for, and I could envision like the two of them like kind of drunkenly like going back and forth. But the specific dialogue itself, it just needed to be cleaned up and reworded to be made a little clearer. For example, it says, hey, slow it down, D. We have already drunk however much our pockets allowed. That part's fine. But then he says, every day logging in a sawmill doesn't earn us an exorbitant booze. The way that's worded is just a little confusing. But then he responds, I was like, don't really use my highlight. Interruption. Wow. Thank you for making me recall who I am. Grimace Dean continued. I would just reword it, right? So because essentially he's upset for being called out as a drunkard. Even though Shawshank is a drunkard as well. So it almost seems like it's like an opportunity for D to be like, I know you are, but what am I like? He's basically like preaching to the choir since they're both drunkards. Well, now you tell me what should I do if I want to drink more. And Rudra around heard that burst. Like the rest of that was fine. And what I like about this part is you have the action, which is mixed in with their dialogue. So it's clear what's going on. And that works out very well for this portion of the scene. You scoundrel, keep your filthy piss inside you. You son of a dog. That's funny. That's funny. Like that works for the character. I think that builds D's character, which works. Let's see. And then John, you made a good point. I think however much our pockets allowed sounds a little rough. Yeah, so I think it just needs to be reworded. That's really all that it is. Shawshank kept laughing. Don't bring my father in between us. Blanchard, at least respect that thing. And then it's like same with this part. And it's like same with like this part right here. Don't bring my father in between us. Ben Shadha, at least respect that thing. That he is no more among us. Otherwise, it may so not happen that he will fall from somewhere in the sky and thrust his walking stick into where you know without any lubricant. Ha ha ha. You see, that's just like a run on dialogue. Imagine a character trying to say that in one breath. So what I would do is I would break that up, I would shorten it, and then include some action that happens in between. Like, don't bring my dead father in between us, Blanchard. End quotation marks as D burped loudly while trying to swing a fist at Shawshank. Otherwise, he may fall from the sky and thrust his walking stick into you know where as he rolled around again. Right? It would just make it a little clearer instead of doing it as one long run on dialogue. But it works how Rudra interrupts. What do you think? The haberdasher is jam-packed. And then the setup for this, the setup with Rudra asking that works. These words brought a happy smile, but this time knowing that you order all the fancy. And I like that. I like the setup for this scene. These words brought a happy smile on Dee's face and finally got what he wanted. But this time, knowing about the treat, he ordered all the fancy decanters of liquor and pouring a tumbler. John actually said something really funny. He thrust his walking stick into the biscuit without any mayonnaise. Oh, that's funny. Oh my goodness. I know. He's joking around. It cracks me up. All right, fancy decanters of liquor and pouring a tumbler full. He thrust it up in the air and screamed, "To the king, then! To the king!" I like that. That's a great setup to the scene. Now, for the scene itself, from an overview perspective, it's the two guys that you have talking who are like talking about the king and talking about the mystery with the girls. I think there's two opportunities with it. First off, I need a clearer distinction on who these two random guys are that they're talking about. I don't really know who each of the guys are when you refer to them. What the best way to go about this is include one clear description for one of the guys and the other one. The one guy could be a skinny, tall guy with a beard and a cane. The other guy could be a younger, bald-looking kid who keeps eating rapidly. And then you can refer to them by that description. But right now, it's just not clear who each of those guys are that are talking. So then the dialogue gets kind of confusing because I'm not sure who the guys are. Other than that, it's two guys who are randomly talking in the hall. And then, our emperor is very gentle. Yeah, and then what I would even recommend, like all the stuff with the emperor and the king, a lot of it is an example of telling versus showing. So I would actually recommend on all the dialogue about the emperor, I would just cut that out and I would save it for a little later, especially if the emperor is going to be an important person. Or if the emperor is used as like a foreshadowing, like maybe the emperor is like the real bad guy, I would just shorten it a little bit. Because right now it just feels like it feels like you're trying to tell us that the emperor is this like crazy prince, even though he has no prince yet. You're trying to tell us that the emperor is crazy. And I would rather that you show us that the emperor is crazy, either later on in the story or at some point. Like, what if the like emperor is like seen like walking by in his like royal procession? You could do so much by showing us that people are afraid of him than telling us all these things about the emperor. The reason being is because from a plot perspective, you did the whole thing with setting up Shawshank and D, but I want to get to the plot where the two random guys are talking about the missing girls, because that's the plot that we're talking about. Right now, the emperor portion of the conversation, it just comes across feeling a little forced. Let's see, don't use that. They're just random guys in the time, but yeah, I can add some descriptions and make it clear that who is who. Yeah, I think it. So I think like Ketan, I think you don't have to spend a lot of time because they're random characters. I think you just need to give like one sentence of description for each, and it just needs to be a very like vivid, very clear description for each. So then when each guy speaks, you can reference. Or what if you made one of them like a woman, like a female, like do a female character and a male character? That'd make it even easier. That would be another easy way to distinguish it. Age is a great way to distinguish as well. Let's see. So yeah, I touched upon that dialogue and that conversation. Resides. Yeah, and then I think the other recommendation is during the dialogue scene with the two guys, just include. I just want a little like description on what those guys are doing. It feels like a little bit too much dialogue, and then just not enough description on like are the two guys. It just feels like it's two random guys in a hall, but I'm drinking, but like, are they eating food? Are they splitting up their drinks? What are they doing in between talking? Are they trying to be secretive and being like speaking in hushed whispers? I just need a little bit more, and it'll help set context for the present moment. So yeah, I think the mess hall or this dining scene is the biggest opportunity for being cleaned up based on the things that I touched about previously. But then when we get to the bathroom scene is great. I'm like, I actually have no problems with the bathroom scene. Like they're like, it's like funny. They go to the bathroom like, well, they're drinking, so the guy's gonna have to piss. So we'll get to him here. I was like, yeah, that's works. So I think the bathroom scene worked out really well. Showing we should tell. And then I like that they reference Yudi because we set up Yudi as the protagonist earlier on. I'm like, ooh, all right, now I want to have Yudi back in the story. So that was really cool. I like that. So I have a few hours and perfect. And then that's kind of where I wrapped up. So I would say like that was definitely that was good. So yeah, once again, I think the strongest was that last portion with them in the bathroom scene. And then the second strongest was the setup in the beginning with them talking to each other with some of those recommendations I mentioned. And then the dining, the food, that scene itself in the middle, I would honestly just start the beginning of that scene and then go through and cutting down whatever isn't necessary to the plot. And it would just clean it up a little bit and make it clearer for the reader. So yeah, and Ketan, that's all that I got for you today. I hope that helped out a little bit, my man. I'm really eager. Like I want to see where the story's going. I'm curious to see what type of like magic these like strange portal characters are going through, and I'm curious to know like what's going on with Yudi and like does Yudi have magic and all these things. So fun work, my man. Definitely let me know in on future weekends if you want me to keep going with this excerpt. Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I 100% want to commend you for continuously working to improve your story. I 100%, I really appreciate it. Definitely entertaining, my man. Okay. So let me pull back up into the chat. Let's see. Looks like we got, hi everyone. I will come. Hey, what's up, my man? What is up? Welcome to the stream. Thanks for dropping by. I actually think I got your story coming up in just a little bit. So definitely stay tuned. I would say just let us know if like I guess you won't really know. Just let us know if you like need to come back or hop back in because I'm going to be touching upon your story in a little bit. Let's see. But thanks for the heads up, Mom. Marta, I actually got your story here on deck. We got reading number 3, Destiny by Marta Chowanska. I was like, hope I didn't butcher your last name. Marta, I got your story here on deck. Super exciting. All right, and let me see what I got here. We don't need that. So, by the way, if you're enjoying the stream, follow and subscribe. Smash that follow button, smash the subscribe button. I live stream every single day, and we got 3 shows for you. Monday through Friday is the Kauffman Writes segment, where it's basically you can join in for a workshop, write with me, and come join the community. Saturdays is the Story and Critique show, where we do our live story readings and critiques. And then Sundays is the Creative Right Now podcast. So follow and subscribe, and you'll be alerted when I go live, when we launch videos about writing and shorts. This is a multi-format live channel. So come join on the fun. My YouTube channel, we just hit 200 subscribers. Woo! I'm like, that's so like success. Like, thank you all for like joining me so far. I literally hit that 200 mark yesterday. I'm like so excited and feel so accomplished and really feel grateful for those of you who are joining me in this journey. So it's like 200 feels like a great, like a huge milestone for me. My first real like stretch goal is to get to 500. So super, very, very excited. Come join in on all the fun, my friends. All right, let's see. All right, Marta, just mine it's Google Translator. I was too lazy to translate it from Polish. That is totally understandable, and thanks for that heads up. So we'll know if I'll know if I'm going through it. If there's like suddenly a section in Polish, I'll be like, "Dang you, Google Translate!" Oh man. And you read my last name like, and you read my last name like Chowanska. Okay. I was like, child. So okay, so the C is silent, and that N, Chowanska. Awesome. Thanks for that pronunciation. After 15 years of customer service, if there's one thing that I appreciate both from people in general and from storytelling, I appreciate names. So if there's one thing that I really do try to get right, is I try to get names right. So thank you for that. Woo woo! Champagne in the bar tonight. There has to be a reason why Jared is early on Saturdays. I mean, I've got to have a life. Kauffman's got to have a life sometimes, You know what's funny is the reason the weekends are earlier is because I try to cater a little bit more to the international audience as well. So it makes it a little more accessible. But then I'm also like, whoa, even though like I'm working like 12, 15 hours every single day, I'm like Saturday nights, sometimes I'll like give myself a little bit of breather on Saturday and Sunday nights, depending. Exactly, right? You know what? The number of times you go to a coffee shop and you're like, yep, that's not the right name at all. I was like, I write good, my friends. I write good. Okay. So let's see. Marta, let me pull up your story. I'm like super excited to check your story out, by the way, my friend. All right, and let me pull it up. Okay. Now, just a heads up, Marta, the way that because you sent it as a PDF, since it's a PDF, I won't be able to do any highlighting or touch the file at all. So, as such, wasn't able to double space it or change the format. So, just do your best to follow along if you want to read with, and I'll do my best to remember any critiques as I go about the reading. All right, and that. All right, beautiful. Okay, so let me pull this up. I am all ready, and we got Destiny. All right, 20 minutes on the clock, and let's do it. The book Destiny discusses the topic of interpersonal relationships, emotions, and choices that shape our reality. The characters must face their own limitations, past traumas, and decisions that affect their lives. Can they change the course of events and face their fate? Or are they just pawns on the chessboard of fate? This book makes the reader reflect on the meaning of life, freedom of choice, and the power of determination. Are we able to read the signs that mark our life paths? Do we have any influence on our fate? Is there such a thing as fate? Or does everything depend on our decisions and actions? Destiny is a book that touches on deep topics, asking the reader difficult questions and encouraging a deeper analysis of one's own life and decisions. It is a story about the power of love, determination, and hope that, regardless of adversity, can overcome any difficulties. The inspiration to write this novel came from the experiences of my father, who is an extremely colorful character. His experiences and stories form the foundation of the first part of the book, adding authenticity and depth to the entire plot. The second part was inspired by another, equally interesting character who looks at the world from a completely different perspective. I wanted to show how different experiences and points of view can influence our lives and decisions. The interwi- The intertwining of these two worlds in the book was intended to show that despite the differences, there is a common thread that connects all people. Are we really the deciders of our fate, or is everything already predetermined? Destiny is a story about inevitable destiny and the everyday struggles that each of us has to face. Are we able to change our lives and create our own reality, or is everything that happens to us already predetermined? Destiny. A Pole with a Frenchman. Chapter 1, Ellsworth Street, London, 1994. A chilling September morning. You can feel the slowly approaching face of autumn in the air. Street noise, crowds typical of London, time 6:30. While others are just waking up to life, there is no sleepy unit in sight here. Street filled with stalls, as every day local shopkeepers begin to set out their products, hoping to make as much profit as possible. From the cheapest stands offering scarves, gloves, hats, and slippers for no more than a few pounds to world-class clothes, this is what Bethnal Green has to offer. There are even wedding and special occasion dresses in the shop windows, costing the equivalent of several £1,000s. Despite the prohibition on taking photos in store windows, women passing by take photos of the dresses for sale, full of sequins and other decorations. Only a few can afford a given expense. Hence, some ladies go a step further and decide to enter such a store, try on a dress, and leave. Me, a foreigner like many others, have to find my way in the current reality of London and the district where I live. In the morning, I walk down a busy street, inadvertently nudging this or that with my shoulder. Hey, do you have any problem? One shouts to me. Not wanting any trouble, I just wave him off as a sign of peace. All I can think about is the supermarket a few blocks away. In leaky shoes, without thinking about putting on my soaked clothes from the previous day, I walk constipated, thinking only about the ingredients for breakfast. I dream of pancakes with maple sauce. I finally reach the supermarket. A strange, unfamiliar shiver runs through me. Even though I visit this store almost every day, I seem to forget why I actually came here. Overcome with complete anxiety, I leave the store as quickly as possible, carrying only rolls in my bag. Dissatisfied, although having saved some money, I return to our studio apartment. A small, dingy, cigarette smoke filled one room apartment, a brothel, as befits men, sink full of dirty dishes. This oasis I share with a Frenchman, a foreigner like me, Sebastian. We are both young men of average build, generally unremarkable. In fact, we see young boys just entering adulthood, doing the best to find themselves in a new reality. I came to this place with the desperate desire to avoid compulsory military service in the country. Sebastian is a reckless traveler who plans to travel around the world. We are considering finding a third roommate to complete the set so we can rent something larger. We are also not happy with excess furniture. We only have one bed at the moment, so every night we have a war over who gets to sleep on the floor. While eating the rolls, I brought Sebastian and I, while eating the rolls I bought, Sebastian and I exchange our experiences. Nowadays, life in Poland is strange, difficult, and ambiguous. After the fall of communism, chaos reigns in the country. This is a period of political transformation, i.e., great changes. The most disturbing thing is the rapidly growing unemployment rate. My mother and brother stayed in the country. I try to support them financially as much as possible because the exchange rates of the British pound and the Polish zloty are incomparable. The economic situation in France, a European Union member state, is much more citizen friendly. The only problem my friend's country faces is the growing number of citizens of the Muslim faith. France subjugated part of the African continent politically and economically, which is why the immigration of Muslims increased. Chapter 2. Day like every day. With a full belly, dressed in denim pants and a denim jacket, with spiky hair, I head to work. As I smoke a cigarette on the way, I enjoy the sound of Backstreet Boys music streaming from my Walkman. Slowly coming back to reality, I try to remember where I left the key to my scooter. I work in a small restaurant. I deliver pizza to customers. The salary may not be astonishing, but it is compensated by quite large daily tips. At some point, I felt the same shiver as in the supermarket. Today, seemingly no different from any other, brings with it a feeling of impending danger. I'm going into the company. I greet everyone with a smile on my face. It seems like nothing special, but I'm slowly starting to stop imagining life without these nice faces. Although I don't recognize one of them today. A gloomy middle-aged man dressed all in black. His piercing gaze makes me uneasy. I learned from the boss that it is Oliver, the new employee as an assistant driver. Without much enthusiasm, I try to approach the situation rationally. The beginning of the day is boring. There are few orders, which means there's less chance of getting satisfactory tips. Traffic increases like every day around 4 p.m. The first interesting order, I grab the pizza boxes out of my boss's hands so Oliver doesn't overtake me. I get on the scooter and set off on the long way to trip. Walking through the streets of London, I admire the sunset. I approach the Caravan Way area from Southwark Park Road. At first glance, you can see that poor people and my beloved gypsies live here. Even though it's not the first time I've done it, when I get off the scooter, I feel the need to be on guard. I pass children interrupting their play to at least enjoy the sight of pizza boxes, women hanging out laundry in the yard, and a few local bums with cans of beer. The staircase where a client lives is almost as dingy as her dormitory. A winding wooden staircase, creaking with every step, straight from a horror movie. I already know that I can't count on a tip, although the client turned out to be trouble-free. Despite my strange premonitions, nothing extraordinary happened today, neither in the company nor during trips. Chapter 3, 1996. Tired after another identical day of work, I return to my apartment. Sebastian should be home by now. I grab the doorknob. A shiver runs through me. I look behind me. I feel watched, but there's no one there. The doors are closed. He hasn't come back yet. I entered the room. Dead silence. Not a single living soul. Live. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the TV turns on and the words 1996 appear on the screen and then disappear. I try not to overinterpret or allow scary figments of my imagination. Lately, I feel like I've lost my mind. Most likely it was Sebastian who changed the TV settings once again. However, the atmosphere in this dingy place is very thick today. Out of the corner of my eye, I see a dark figure moving. Scared, I quickly look behind me, but there's nothing there again. As I step out on the ice-cold floor, I simultaneously consider going to a psychiatrist and buying a warm carpet. My body is having a harder time coping with stress and fatigue, and sleeping on the icy floor doesn't make my life any easier. I put the Chinese soup in the microwave. For a split second, I had the impression that the number 1996 appeared on the display. I don't remember when I was so tired. I must have been anticipating something, trying to find positives in the difficult evening. I turned my fear into a joke and decided to play the lottery, selecting the numbers 1996. It's almost midnight. Sebastian hasn't come home yet. I'm not going to worry about that clown after all. I will finally sleep in a comfortable bed. A dark figure approaches me. I can't move. I'm paralyzed with fear. This demon is getting closer. I feel like I can't breathe. Suddenly I hear a voice saying, "You have time until 1996. I wake up. The shirt and pants are all soaked. I think I have a fever. The number 1996 repeating in my head worries me. I think that tomorrow after work, I will go to the bookstore and buy a book about numerology. With a little skepticism, I go back to sleep. Sebastian must have had a good time. All right. And end scene. So we'll end off the reading there because I wanted to make sure we have enough time to chat about it. Awesome. So first of all, Marta, that was a really interesting story. I feel like we got a really interesting setup and suspense about something like really creepy that potentially might happen. I really like the suspense moments with the creepy. You do a couple things. So you do it in, I think, the second chapter, where you do the creepy suspense with that new coworker. You do the creepy suspense with when he's traveling through his trip, his deliveries for the day. And then I like how it's building up in the third chapter with like, okay, he's by himself, home alone. He has this dream, this number 1996. I think that's really interesting. And I think it makes it a lot of fun to kind of build up and kind of drive like, oh, what's going to happen? What's like the mystery? And I think because you start off the story on, it starts off on a very like neutral tone. So those were definitely some things I liked about it. Also, your structure. Now, I know you shared that this was from Google Translate. Must have stayed awake for several nights to get so insane. So I know you shared you put this through Google Translate, so I'm not going to really worry about structure or anything like that, especially because you've written this in another language. So structure is probably going to be completely different and international for different audiences. So with that being said, I'm more focused on the story itself. I think if I were to think about opportunities for the story, first off, I like that you did the forward. I think forwards from authors are actually always really interesting. And I think that I really no suggestions for the forward. The forward is essentially your thoughts of an author. I don't think there's any right or wrong way to do a forward because this is essentially you talking to the reader about why the story is. Yeah, I'm not really going to. I like that you're touching upon destiny as it being predetermined. Yeah, no comments on that. I would rather touch into the story. I think the first chapter does a good job of setting it up, and I actually very much want to commend you because your overall sentence choice and the overall flow is actually really, really smooth. The way that you're able to navigate through the storytelling is done very, very well. And even with like Google Translate aside, you understand your sentence structure very, very well, and you understand your word choice. And that can be a very hard things for writers to accomplish sometimes. So really great work. Really great work. I think my recommendations are going to be in a lot more of minutia things to really elevate the story. But from a pure like basic story level, it's doing really, really well right now. I can check if your Polish is correct. I'm like, okay, because I understand so much Polish. I might need Google Translate. Okay. So let's see, me, a foreigner like many others, have to find my way. So the first chapter is basically setting up for the main character. I like that you're setting up kind of like I like that you're setting up the world very well. You're kind of describing what's going on. Oasis I share with we are both young men, average build, generate. Something I would challenge when you say this oasis I share with Frenchmen, a foreigner like me, Sebastian, we are both young men of average build, generate unremarkable. Would a character think that they themselves are unremarkable? Maybe yes, maybe no. Does anybody think that they are unremarkable? Maybe. I mean, it could be because they're more self-aware. But something about that stood out to me, and I can't tell whether or not I like it or dislike it. I'm kind of on the fence about it. I'm like, okay, so he thinks he's unremarkable, doing the best to find themselves in it, and then you explain it in this paragraph. You explain the hero's backstory. In fact, we see young boys entering adulthood doing their best to find themselves, comes placed with a desperate desire to avoid compulsory military service in the country. And I think right now I'm just not sure why he believes he himself is unremarkable in comparison to this. I would actually almost recommend, because technically this paragraph is about Sebastian. I would actually recommend moving the section about your protagonist to its own paragraph and giving the paragraph, because we want to learn about Sebastian. Sebastian's is obviously an important character, but I think your protagonist description about why he thinks that they're unremarkable should be his own thing, because we're learning about who the protagonist is. Um, I'm a little uncertain why he himself thinks he's unremarkable. In fact, we see young boys entering adulthood doing their best to find themselves in a new reality, because he thinks he's unremarkable in comparison to seeing boys trying to find themselves. I think I might expand on that idea just a little bit. I came to this place with a desperate desire to avoid compulsory military service in the country. Like, that's interesting, right? He doesn't want to fight he doesn't want to be in a military. He doesn't want to fight in a war. And I think that's interesting. I almost kind of want to know, why doesn't he want to fight in the military? For whatever reason is important to the character. But that's interesting. I think the bed thing is really funny. We are not so happy about. We only have one bed at the moment, so that's hilarious. I think that's great. So I wrote Sebastian exchange your experiences. Yeah, I think that's my only recommendation for the first chapter, is just clarifying that. And then something else to think about, Marta. This is an overall general. So I'm obviously, like, I know you share this is based on a true story. Yep, you said it's based on a real story. The question I want you to think about is suspense. I think there's a couple opportunities in the first and second chapter to drive the suspense even more so, but it depends on what your intention is and what you want the reader to feel. Do you want your reader to feel more suspense for this character in the early chapters? If so, the reason I'm saying this is because from the third chapter, the third chapter almost comes across as a thriller. And I'm like, that's interesting. Whereas the first chapter kind of comes across as like an autobiography. And then the second chapter, kind of an autobiography with little like hints of suspense. I would suggest elevating the suspense moments in the first and second chapter, so thematically all of them feel like they're part of the same genre. And it can actually be done really easily, because in the first chapter you touch upon the marketplace, and I would unfamiliar shiver runs through me, even though I forget why I actually came here, overcome. Right, so he gets a shiver from going to the marketplace. Have something specific happen, right? What is it that like causes him to shiver, or have like a scare moment? Whatever you want to do, I would just elevate that and highlight that a little bit to drive the suspense. And like, is there anything suspenseful about Sebastian? Like, or have him and Sebastian been roommates for a while? They're more developed later. Okay. So I would say definitely this oyster shirt foreigner like me, Sebastian. It would also be interesting if like there was like some suspense about Sebastian, like him questioning Sebastian's character. If their roommate arrangement is a little on the newer side. And I think that's another good opportunity for suspense. The second chapter is going to be more of the same thing. The pizza, day like every day. And I like this. So like the second chapter, you do this, right? So you talk about that impending danger. You absolutely talk about that, and I like that. A gloomy, middle-aged man dressed all in black. So like that's interesting. I love this moment. I absolutely love this moment. He's walking to work, he's happy, and then there's this like gloomy looking guy, which makes me almost think like that Oliver is like this like emo kid, because you've touched upon kids trying to find themselves in the first chapter. I would just a small recommendation at the end of this sentence. I would end it off with Oliver almost like with I would end it off with Oliver kind of giving him the look or him trying to avoid the look that Oliver's giving him. That would drive suspense a little bit more. And then you kind of go through this. This paragraph, I would go back and I would just edit down a little bit just in term for brevity or split it up into 2 paragraphs. No, it's not the first time I've done that. And then like the third chapter was great. I feel like the third chapter kind of felt like I was reading like a thriller novel. And you have like the TV thing, which is great. The atmosphere is dark. The floor, the bed, the Chinese soup with the numbers, like the lottery thing is funny. I'm like, yeah, number 1996. That's interesting. Like now I want to know if he's going to win the lottery. My guess is you probably reference that later in the chapter or later in the story. And then you have the sleeping thing, and this like first dream or nightmare is interesting. So no other comments. That so far everything in the third chapter works really well for me. It was just thinking about the elements in the first and second chapter. So awesome. Really, Marta, really great work. This is a really intriguing story. And the fact that, right, like you're writing the story in Polish, and then it says that as I finish the book, you'll translate it to English later. Like, we appreciate that. And if there's one thing that like the algorithms, and I know like YouTube is focused on in the future, it's being able to translate videos, media, writing for foreign audiences, international audiences, because there's a huge need from different audiences who both speak English and non-English to be able to consume the same type of stuff. So that's really awesome. Really great setup to the story, Marta. I'm like very interested to see, like, I really want to see where this, like, where the suspense is going. It feels like there's going to be like a supernatural element, but I'm like, it's based on a real story, so it's hard to say. I feel like something really cool is going to happen. So eager to read more. Thank you so much, my friend. All right, and let's see, what do we got next? Oh, and by the way, I got Andrew. I got your story on deck, my man, the Virtuous Warrior. Let's see. Madzurker, are you still here in the chat, man? I know you were saying earlier your phone might have died. Just Madzurker, holler at me if you're still here in the chat as I pull your story up. Came back just in time. Perfect. Wonderful timing. Beautiful. Excellent. Okay, so let's see. We'll get yours. All right, so I'm just pulling let's see, where did your story go? I want to say it was this one. All right, perfect. And we got this. And by the way, if you're just hopping into the stream right now, we're just doing story readings and excerpts and critiques. So if you want your story read or you want like a feedback, let's see, where is that? There you go. Send an excerpt to thecreativeghostwriter@gmail.com. Feel free to sit back and listen in on the stories, and or feel free, like, you can join in on the conversation, and let's improve our creative writing journey together. All right, and I got yours pulled up. Perfect. And let's see, I just got to check my email, make sure I haven't missed anything. All right, perfect. And we got the timer, and I am all set. So y'all know, if you were here, and I think this was either last weekend's, this was either last Saturdays or the previous ones. We actually read through a former version of this story. Now, something that, once again, like, I have to commend you, Amen, for basically taking the story, adding to it, like taking the feedback and then improving it and bringing it to the next level. So, like, I absolutely love this. We're reading a later version of this story. So I think we're going to be getting more context, more details, and more of the follow through on this overall story. So I'm excited for it. Thanks for sending it back. Okay. All right. So we got 20 minutes on the clock. The Virtuous Warrior by Mudzerker, aka Andrew Hall. All right. In the heart of a bleak and unforgiving neighborhood, where the wails of sirens pierced the air and the shadows whispered tales of despair, a young man named Jake struggled to find his place in the world. Raised amidst the harsh realities of poverty and violence, Jake's childhood was marked by adversity and hardship. From a young age, Jake's relationship with his mother was marked by turmoil and instability. Born to a teenage mother who had herself experienced a troubled upbringing. Born to a teenage mother who herself had experienced a troubled upbringing, Jake entered the world against a backdrop of poverty and despair. His mother, having lost both her parents by the age of 15, was thrust into adulthood far too soon, forced to fend for herself in a harsh and unforgiving world. Desperate to escape the cycle of poverty that had ensnared her, Jake's mother turned to desperate measures, resorting to working as a streetwalker to make ends meet. But her attempts to provide for her son were overshadowed by the grip of addiction, as she fell prey to the lure of drugs that promised temporary solace from the harsh realities of her existence. Despite her best intentions, Jake's mother struggled to overcome her demons, and her efforts to create a stable home for her son were often thwarted by her own inner turmoil. As Jake grew older and began to understand the extent of his mother's struggles, he found himself torn between love and resentment, longing for the nurturing presence he so desperately craved, yet recoiling from the chaos and instability that defined their relationship. As Jake entered grade school, his mother's addiction spiraled out of control, leading to periods of neglect and abuse that left him scarred, both physically and emotionally. Basic needs went unmet as his mother's priorities shifted, consumed by the relentless grip of addiction that threatened to consume them both. Regardless of the hardships he faced at home, Jake clung to the hope that his mother would one day overcome her demons and reclaim her role as a loving and supportive parent. But as the years passed and the cycle of addiction tightened its hold, that hope began to fade, replaced by a growing sense of resignation and despair. Jake found himself navigating the treacherous streets at a tender age, seeking refuge in the embrace of street gangs and their illicit activities. At just 14 years old, he took his first steps into the shadowy world of drug dealing, a desperate bid to survive in a world that offered little in the way of hope or opportunity. His mother, trapped in the cycle of addiction, could offer little guidance or support, leaving Jake to fend for himself in a world that showed no mercy. By the time he reached 17, he had forged his own path, moving out on his own and securing an apartment through deceit and manipulation. Fueled by the promise of easy money and the false sense of power that came with gang life, Jake was fully immersed in the dangerous underworld of drug dealing, using intimidation and violence to maintain his grip on the streets. But beneath the facade of bravado and swagger, a sense of emptiness chewed at his soul, a nagging reminder of the price he paid for survival. As Jake embarked on his journey of redemption, he carried with him the weight of his past, the scars of his upbringing, serving as a constant reminder of the struggles he had endured. Yet, even in the darkest moments, he clung to the hope that one day he and his mother would find healing and reconciliation, forging a new beginning out of the ashes of their shared pain. Jake's reputation grew. So too did the risks and dangers that accompanied his chosen path. Each day brought new challenges and threats, pushing him further into the depths of darkness. And as he looked upon the world he had helped create, Jake couldn't help but wonder if there was more to life than the endless cycle of violence and despair. Jake had been on edge, constantly dodging the members of his own gang. The weight of guilt hung heavy on his soul, a burden he couldn't shake. Selling drugs had once seemed like the only way to survive in the unforgiving streets, but with each transaction, he felt the weight of the lives he had harnessed pressing down on him. As he navigated the maze of hallways, Jake couldn't shake the haunting images of those he had unwittingly dragged into the cycle of addiction and despair. Their faces lingered in his mind, accusing him silently of the pain he had caused. Jake distanced himself from his gang, gradually withdrawing from their activities and neglecting his duties. Faced with mounting pressure and seeking an escape, he became increasingly desperate. The fear of retaliation preyed on him, as he realized he was adrift without answers or direction. Caught between the threat of his own gang and the remorse gnawing at his conscience, Jake felt trapped in a downward spiral with no way out. But little did he know, fate had a different path in store for him, one that would lead him to an unlikely encounter with a mysterious savior named Shadow. On this fateful day, as Jake entered the liquor store, he found himself face to face with his former gang. Tension crackled in the air as they pressed him, demanding answers about the money for the drugs they had fronted him, and questioning his absence from their operations. Their leader, Spade, loomed over Jade with a menacing glare, his presence suffocating. The confrontation escalated quickly, with insults hurled and fists clenched, leaving Jake feeling cornered and vulnerable. They made their way out back of the store. The gang closed in on Jake, their menacing figures silhouetted against the dimly lit alleyway. Jake's heart raced with fear and adrenaline. With nowhere to turn, he braced himself for the impending confrontation. As Spade gave the order, two imposing members of the gang moved forward, their intentions clear as they advanced towards Jake with menacing intent. With a sinking feeling in his chest, Jake realized he was trapped, his back against the cold, unforgiving wall of the alley. The rest of the gang stood on notice, their dark figures casting long shadows against the dimly lit backdrop. Jake's heart raced with fear and adrenaline, his senses heightened as he braced himself for the inevitable confrontation. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. All he could do was steel himself for whatever was to come. Their ruthless leader, with his fierce, unforgiving personality, was a burly figure with a sneer etched onto his face, stepping forward, cracking his knuckles menacingly. "Thought you could walk these streets without paying your dues, huh?" he growled, his voice dripping with malice. But before the situation could escalate further, a mysterious figure emerged from the shadows. Clad in darkness, with only the glint of his eyes visible, the stranger seemed to materialize out of thin air. "Leave him alone," the stranger's voice echoed, sending a shiver down the spines of the gang members. His presence exuded an aura of power and authority, halting the assailants in their tracks. With a swift motion, Jake seized the opportunity and darted past the bewildered gang members, his heart pounding louder than his footsteps against the pavement as he raced through the labyrinth of hallways. Behind him, he could hear the sounds of confusion and anger as the gang members scrambled to give chase. In his desperate fight, Jake found himself at a dead end, trapped like a cornered animal. The walls of the alley seemed to close in around him, suffocating him with the weight of his own fear and uncertainty. But just as all hope seemed lost, the shadowy figure reappeared, extending a hand to Jake. Before Jake could respond, the shadowy figure stepped forward, revealing himself to be more than just a mysterious silhouette. His features were obscured by darkness, yet there was a sense of wisdom and strength emanating from him. I am Shadow, he announced, his voice commanding attention despite its softness. And you are? Jake hesitated, grappling with the realization that this encounter was far from ordinary. Gathering his courage, he replied, I'm Jake. The simple exchange of names felt significant, as if sealing an unspoken pact between them. Curiosity mingled with apprehension as Jake approached Shadow. With a simple nod, Shadow extended an invitation that would alter the course of Jake's life forever. Come with me, he said, his voice a rumble like distant thunder. There's something I want to show you. The air crackled with anticipation as Jake hesitated, torn between the safety of familiarity and the unknown promise of this enigmatic stranger. Without fully understanding why, Jake felt a sense of trust wash over him. Perhaps it was the desperation of his situation, or the allure of a new path away from the violence and despair of the streets. Whatever the reason, Jake nodded in agreement, following Shadow into the darkness with the glimmer of hope flickering in his heart. Intrigued, yet cautious, Jake followed Shadow through the winding alleys and dimly lit streets until they arrived at a rundown gym tucked away in the heart of the neighborhood, its faded sign barely visible in the moonlight. The gym seemed to hold secrets of its own, whispering tales of redemption and transformation. Whew. All right, and I'm going to end the reading there. Wow. Oh my goodness. I love that. I was so engaged in that story. You've added so much detail and you fleshed out so many of the core components, which we talked about in the rough draft that we saw from last time. Like, oh my God, like that was incredible. I want to absolutely 100% commend you for not only taking the feedback, but then you've gone and you fleshed this out. This feels like a fully realized and fully developed short story. And I mean, last time, I think we got through that whole section in we had enough time in the reading itself. And then this time where I'm looking through here, this time we're barely maybe a third through the story. So this is definitely a fully realized short story. Really great work. And I was really engaged. I feel like I've learned so much more about Jake and the obstacles that he's overcoming. It's really great work. Really, really great work. And once again, man, I have to say, I absolutely adore your style of storytelling. The way your personal style, it's like a mix between folklore and reality. And you do it in a way where it's just intriguing. And it feels like it the way the story is set, it feels like it takes place in the present world, but then as you dive into the story, it's okay, it's a step away from reality, clearly with the Shadow type character. So very, very cool. I absolutely love that. Let's see, let me pull this up. So I do not need that banner. Okay, so as I'm digging into it, the beginning was really, really strong. I really liked the beginning section. And so let me just hop in the comments real fast. Yeah, sometimes see the same thing. Yeah, so I think I was seeing some of your comments over here. So I would agree on some of the descriptions. This is actually something that I deal with as well in my own writing, especially as you've been watching me write Last Scarecrow. Um, we get so into wanting to describe the scenes and describe the actions that sometimes we can use a little too much adjectives and too much description to over describe something. I think there's moments where that does happen, but it's like the complete 180 of where it was before. Like the last draft, like there wasn't enough description, and now what you've done is you've added so much detail. Now at times there's a little too much. So this is perfect because you have the framework there, and now it allows you to dial back in terms of some of the word choice. Now, obviously, I don't have time to dig into the specific line by line edit that a story like this would deserve. So what I usually recommend is print this story out, read it to like your family or somebody, but it's more so read it to yourself. And then listen on how each page and each section sounds. So you can hear what words, what things sound a little too descriptive. That's actually a great recommendation when you're trying to cut down on adjectives and things that sound like too much. Because in our head, yeah, that sounds great. I'm describing it. That's cool. But then hearing it aloud gives us another perspective. And that's short of like hiring an editor per se. I think that's a good way to go about doing it yourself. That is absolutely free. Okay, so let's erase once the harsh realities. I love the setup. Your setup works from a young age, and you really go into describing the relationship with the mother, which is perfect because it's clear what his motives and his goal is. Turned out. And it's like so sad. It's like so like emotionally heartfelt. His mother, because they're in such a world of poverty. His mom's a streetwalker. Like that's so heartbreaking. She's a streetwalker and a drug addict. Like, oh, that's horrible. Is something I want to clarify. So streetwalker, does that mean a prostitute? Is that the description for streetwalker? I personally haven't heard the term streetwalker, but that could just be a me thing. So I would just clarify that the use of streetwalker. I assume that's what it meant, but I'm not clear. So random thought. Yes, prostitute. Okay, cool. I would just clarify. Let me pose this to the chat then. Was streetwalker clear to y'all that it meant prostitute? Thoughts? Let me just know if that came across clearly. The drug addiction stuff was clear. I think I like kind of like I assumed, but I wasn't 100% certain. Let's see, despite Jake's mother. God, and I love this because you're touching upon the demons that the mother is trying to overcome, which is really the demons that the mothers are overcoming is thematically the demons that Jake's going to overcome. Jared, yes, I'm sure. Okay, perfect. John agrees, so it makes sense. Okay. Let's see. Despite our best intentions, struggle to overcome our demons. Son, as Jake grew older and began to understand. Yeah, I think all of this is good. And then we talk about Jake entering grade school and it getting worse, basically. That all works. And I think what you do a really good job is how a child is affected by a parent who's A, very low income, right? And B, has an addiction, which addictions are diseases. So I think you do a good job of showing that. Yeah, hold that replaced by a growing sense of resignation and despair. Seeking, and that's just so sad. So he has to navigate the streets at 14 years old. And that's perfect. So you like kind of set up at each age. Some let's see. I would say something that I would suggest for just cementing the core present moment of the story. Each time you do a time jump, I would start off the paragraph that does the time jump with is at. just so that way I'm clear on where I am in the present moment. So like in the beginning, like the opening paragraph is fine. That's a setup. But I mean, you're saying from a young age, Jake's relationship with his mother, because that's lost both her parents by the age of 15. That's an overview, desperate to escape the cycle of poverty. Jake's mother, yep. And this is because you're jumping his age. You're going through a couple different chapters of his life. I would even recommend it being like from a young at the age of however old he was, Jake's relationship with his mother. So you can set like his original age, because in a couple paragraphs, then you jump ages again. And because you do this a couple times, desperate, Jake's mother struggled. That's all good. And then as Jake entered grade school, I might recommend setting his age again, because you're jumping forward in time once more. Regardless of the hardships, Jake found himself at just 14 years old. And then you're jumping time skips again at 14 years old, which is good. I would just start this section off with at 14 years old, just to clarify that, make it crystal clear for the reader. And then once again, starting off with at 17 years old, or however you want to word it. Yeah, I like the timeline. I think it's literally just making it clear for the reader, so that way the reader's not confused on where the present moment is. But I actually like that. I like that you made the choice to do the time skips. I think it sets up his backstory really well. And then what I would clarify is, now that we're in the present moment of the story, yeah, so now that we're in the present moment of the story, now that we're no longer doing backstory, I would clarify that this is now the present moment. And doing that something as like Jake looked in the mirror as he thought back to his upbringing with his mother. So that way we know now this is where the story is taking place. Everything before this was basically him recalling or thinking back to what happened. And it would pull the reader in more, as compared to we're being told a story by a narrator, by you, the narrator, as compared to we're being told the story because it's actually Jake is thinking about his past. So that would be my suggestion. And I think that would cement us in this moment a little bit more, because all the gang stuff, that's interesting. That is really interesting. Redemption, I cared with them. I love this. And like all this recollection is great, because this is like the character journey that is really overcoming. Something else, this is another recommendation. Something else you can also try to cement the present moment is you could have a paragraph in the beginning after this like setup of Jake. The present moment is Jake looking into a mirror, Jake thinking back to his past, and then him thinking through his childhood. That's another way to cement the present moment. There's no right or wrong way to do it, though. It's just however you want to go about it. And the reason it's important to cement where the present moment is in the story is so the reader doesn't get lost. Jack had been on edge. All the gang stuff was great. That's good. I like that you keep it kind of like general. It's that sense of storytelling I like. So with the setup with Jake wanting to back out of the gang as he navigated, Jake couldn't shake the images of those he had unwitted as he navigated the maze of alleys. So we're in the present moment right now, pressing. Yeah. Okay. So I was trying to make sure. I wanted to make sure that this was right. So in this present moment, I think you just need to more solidify that right now. So he's navigating the maze of alleys, because in the previous paragraph, this is more a general like overview of what's going on. Because your paragraphs switch between present moment, overview of what's happening, present overview. Um, you just have to make it a little clearer, so that way the reader doesn't get lost. And you kind of say, by he's navigating the maze of alleyways. I would clarify this even more with like, why is he navigating this maze of alleyways right now? As he navigated the maze of alleyways, Jake was running from his demons. As he was navigating the maze of alleyways to do a drug deal that he didn't want to do. So I think that would help cement the present moment. Their faces lingered in his mind, accusing him silently of the pain. Yeah, and I think like even like descriptions, like when you think of this, like their faces lingered in his mind, like that's good. Accusing him, and like you don't even need silently. So because since they're in his mind, it's like, okay, accusing him of their pain. Accusing him of the pain he had caused. Lingered in his mind, accusing him of the pain he had caused. So you can do like word, that'd be how you would like think about word choice. And then the liquor store scene is good. I really like the liquor store scene. So I think that my only recommendation, I mean, you set up the gang leader, great, Spade, awesome. I think my only recommendation for the liquor store scene is when Shadow appears, I need a little bit more reaction on how the gang members and how Jake respond to Shadow appearing. You have Jake respond to it when he runs out into the alley, which is good. But if you're standing in a liquor store and something magical happens, it's going to change. It might change your entire reality and the entire way that you perceive the world. You touch upon it briefly, but it doesn't feel like it's enough that warrants this like a black smoke, a black cloud of this like black cloud of like this like voice, this voidless figure shows up, materializes out of thin air. I think this would create a lot more fear. So you touch upon his voice sends a shiver down the spines of the gang members, and you touch upon that. But I think like here we need some type of way of like, how do the gang members respond to it? What's stopping the gang members from like, some guy just showed up and materials out of thin air? What's stopping everybody from just running away? Or are they now going to point their guns or their weapons at this figure? I think I need something like that. I like that Jake sees the opportunity to run past the gang members, but I need a little bit more response to that happening, because that's crazy, especially because you've set up the story so far in the present moment, and it would just make this make it feel even add to that magical surrealism. But yeah, other than that, that's all that I got for you for this excerpt. I'm like loving what you've done so far, and I'm eager to keep reading it and kind of see how like much you've improved the story. I could like definitely see this as being like a published like short story, or as part of an anthology. But really great work, man. Really, really great work. Thanks for sending that to me. That was awesome. Let's see. And then I know you had mentioned that you said that you guys have helped inspire the story. Like, that is so cool. That is so incredible. I know you mentioned that to me before, but I just wanted to highlight that. That is so, so cool. I'm really glad that we were able to kind of like help you and then also create like inspiration, motivation. And what you've done with this version of the story compared to the previous version, mind blowing. Really great work. Like, that's the process. And like, you're going to be so successful with just continuing in that same process. That's how we improve as writers. It's the original version could be amazing, it could be garbage, but the process is how do we get it to a published version. So really great work, man. I'm like, I think that's incredible. So I think it's important, so simple and perfect. I like how you've expanded the story. Absolutely. You guys are awesome. Heart goes out to you, my man. Keep up the great writing and eager to read more. Okay, dokie. And what to do we got next? Nope, that's not what I need. Okay, so we got reading number 5. So on deck, I got Dinky and the Eagle Thieves. So Carla, this was another story excerpt that we had read previously. This was a not children's. This was like kind of like young adult-ish, kind of like a children's story. It feels like a more expanded children's story. So I was actually eager to kind of get into this next portion of the reading. So I'm super excited. Awesome. And Carla, by the way, let me know if you're here in the chat. I know that you're in a completely different part of the world, so I know the time may be off, but let me know if you're here. Okay. So we got Dinky and the Eagle Thieves. Now, as I'm queuing this up, by the way, don't forget to like the stream. Let me know that you're getting value out of this and help me show the algorithm and the people watching that we're enjoying it. So tap that like button, like, love, whatever platform you're on. I got all 5 of the platforms here. We got Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitch, and X. So if you're on any of the platforms, I appreciate you and thank you for dropping by. Okay, so we're tapping that like button and then we're going to see what we have next. Okay, so we got Dinky and the Eagle Thieves. Okay, and let me pull this up. All right, and give me just a second. I'm just adjusting this so it's easier to read. And I want to say that we're at the beginning of a chapter, I believe. I might have left in the middle. Perfect. Chapter 3. All right. So I wanted to make sure that I was centered here. So if let's see, if you were here previously, another excerpt, I think we touched on this on a couple critique shows ago. So this was a children's story. We got through the first couple chapters. It was about a young child, Dinky, and her mentor, Johnny, as they went on a bike ride through this area. And it's a very much coming of age story with young Dinky and how she's learning to kind of ride her bike. And then as they're riding, they kind of encounter different sights. And their bike, Dinky's bike, she sets it down and suddenly it's stolen by these eagles, by these like giant eagles that are like monsters and scary. So let's hop back into it. We're just at chapter 3, right as the eagles are attacking. Okay. And let me... Okay. Dinky and the Eagle Thieves. Dinky tries to scream, but no sound comes out. Chapter 3. There's no way Dinky and Johnny can defend themselves against these monsters. The eagles are humongous, with ferocious beaks and razor-sharp claws. It's so frustrating. All they can do is watch. The thieves fly away with Dinky's bicycle. Dinky bursts out, crying. She is sad, scared, and shocked all at once. Johnny tries to console her while making an emergency phone call to William. They just came out of nowhere. Dinky's bike got stolen by 2 monstrous eagles. We don't know what to do right now. Please come help. Oh no, what a calamity, shouts William. We are on our way as we speak. You guys need to get back to the meeting spot safely and quickly, please. Dinky and Johnny start heading towards the meeting spot on foot. Johnny pushes his bike along so that Dinky doesn't feel alone, especially after what just happened. Soon, they meet up with William and Suki, who brought along a local forest guard to help with the search. Dinky, still crying, climbs in the back of the car. She's starting to wish she never came on this ride. It's okay, dear child, says Suki softly. We will find your bike again. I'm sure it'll be all right soon, darling. I have a feeling we should go look for that strange village people told us about, says William. Yes, perhaps the people there might know where to find the eagle thieves, agrees Johnny, always hopeful. Dinky, you still have your cell phone, right? Dinky takes her phone out of her pants pocket. Yep, I do. William and I will head into the forest on foot. You stay here with Suki and Mr. Forest Guard. Is that okay? Dinky's feeling truly hopeless right now. Although she doesn't even think they will get her bike back, she says, sure, good luck with the search. And so the search for Dinky's mountain bike begins. Mr. Forest Guard gets into the passenger seat next to Suki. I know the forest like the back of my hand. Let's drive and search along the fire roads. Suki is happy to follow the lead of this friendly forest protector. Perfect. I knew it was a good idea to ask for your help, Mr. Forest Guard. Take that road on the left here, Mr. Forest Guard tells Suki to drive towards an old, overgrown road. Dinky notices plants and rocks where Mr. Forest Guard is pointing. Frankly, the road doesn't look like a road, but just another part of the forest. Are you sure this is an actual road, Mr. Forest Guard? Asks Dinky. Dinky, dear, be careful not to look a gift horse in the mouth, whispers Suki so only Dinky can hear. But Dinky's phone rings. It's Johnny. They haven't found any signs of Dinky's mountain bike yet. No village and no eagles either. Oh no, my battery's going flat, says Dinky. I'll message you later. Just as Dinky puts the phone down, they hear a loud thump. The car comes to a sudden stop. Someone should probably get out and check. Dinky is super worried and too scared to get out in the dark. I think we hit a rock, says Mr. Forest Guard, concerned. Chapter 4. I'm sure it's nothing serious, affirms Suki. Let me try and give it some gas. Suki steps on the petrol like she means it. A few loud cracks and spins later, the car somehow bumps its way over the big rock and keeps going. It's dark now, warns Dinky. Maybe we should head back before we get stuck for real next time. But what about your bicycle, dear? Asks Suki. I still know a few shortcuts, urges Mr. Forest Guard. I'm not sure, guys. Perhaps we should just accept that it's gone. Just as Dinky is about to give up all hope, she hears the whispering hum of a mysterious song. She's not sure where it's coming from or if anyone else is hearing it. Just say the word and we will turn right back around, asks Suki, reluctant yet compassionate as always. Dinky tries to pinpoint where the faint hum is coming from, but she can't find it. She notices that the song makes her feel safe somehow. It's okay. Let's keep going, Dinky says, surprised by her own spontaneous words of hope. In the meantime, Johnny and William are searching in another part of the forest. They're in the thick of the brush now and struggling to see where to go with the darkness settling in. Shh, I hear something, says William. Johnny listens closely. Look there, in the bushes up ahead. Greetings, friends! It's the colorful shepherd. I came from the village as soon as I heard the awful news. My people said they saw the eagles fly overhead with what looked like a stolen bicycle, and I remembered the two friendly little bikers I met earlier. Wow, it's so nice to see you again, Mr. Shepherd, says Johnny, relieved to get some help. Yes, you're right. Those evil eagles stole my friend Dinky's bicycle. Please, can you help us find the bicycle, Mr. Shepherd? Inquires William. I saw the eagles land and I followed them. It seemed like it was not too far away from here. Come, I will show you, says Mr. Shepherd, eager to help. Johnny sends a location pin to Dinky and tells her they should come meet them here right away. It's dark now and the moon is out, but the tall trees and their ominous shadows make it difficult to see nevertheless. Dinky, Sookie, and the forest guard almost make it to where the location pin has sent them when Dinky's phone goes off. Oh no, how are we going to reach Johnny and William now? Wonders Dinky out loud. From what I remember, this is the end of the old road system. Mr. Forest Guard gets out to have a look around. The car cannot go any further. We will have to continue on foot. Perhaps we should go home. They might start heading back once they notice Dinky's phone is off, says Sookie, scared all of a sudden. Dinky also really doesn't want to get out of the car in the dark. The forest that seemed pretty in the day is super scary at night. Chapter 5. Perhaps turning around is our only option then. Mr. Forest Guard doesn't want anyone to get hurt. I'll stay outside to show you how best to turn the car around, Sookie. Dinky hears the mysterious song again. Do you guys hear that? She asks this time. There's the sound of leaves crushing, and suddenly William and Johnny appear from the bushes. Johnny! William! Shouts Sookie. Johnny's pulling through the bushes with him. My bike! Shouts Dinky, recognized it immediately. I cannot believe what I'm seeing! Sookie smiles broadly. Mr. Forest Guard is relieved and happy to see Dinky's mountain bike again. We should say thanks to William turns around to beckon Mr. Shepherd closer, but he isn't there. He was just here now. Johnny is confused. Mr. Shepherd showed us where the eagles stashed their stolen treasure, and that's exactly where we found your mountain bike, Dinky. You meant the colorful shepherd with the cute goats? Where is he now? Says Dinky. I really ought to thank him. He actually comes from the village we heard about, Johnny confirms. It seems like you will have to go visit him there to say thanks. Sookie gives Dinky a big hug. I'm just so happy you and your bicycle are together again. Me too, says Dinky with a massive smile on her face. Me 3, says William, winking. And 4, says Johnny, finally laughing again. And me, says Mr. Forest Guard, satisfied that everyone is safe and can go home with a happy ending. Sookie, William, and Mr. Forest Guard lead the way home, while Johnny and Dinky follow on their bikes. Dinky is so happy to have her mountain bike back that she's not even scared of the narrow trail anymore. Never mind the dark. Maybe next time we will come look for Mr. Shepherd so I can thank him, says Dinky to Johnny. Yes, apparently the village is not too far from here, confirms Johnny. How funny. It seems the village isn't so strange after all. Dinky sure learned a lot today. The entourage of friends safely make their way out of the forest. As Dinky takes one last look back, she spots 2 eagle-shaped silhouettes peeking out over the old forest treetops. First faintly, then loud and clear, she hears the mysterious humming tune again. She closes her eyes, half expecting Mr. Shepherd to appear, but instead, she falls asleep almost instantly. In the distance, the 2 eagles spread their wings, fly down into the forest, and just like that, disappear into the shadowy night. End reading. Wow. First off, Carla, thank you so much for sharing the rest of that story. That was a really interesting coming of age. Really interesting. I was actually really curious the last time we got through here how they were going to resolve the overall storyline and the plot with the bicycle and the resolution. It's interesting because from a foreshadowing perspective, I know you referenced that shepherd earlier in the story, and I wasn't expecting the shepherd was going to come back. The shepherd's kind of like this like magical, this mystery like magical man. I think what I really like the most is I like Suki's character development. She's kind of like this like wide-eyed, like innocent young girl, or not Suki, Dinky is this wide-eyed innocent young girl, and she's kind of learning about like overcoming like not being afraid of the dark and like learning about friendship. I would say that the thematic tones of this is friendship, courage, and almost wonder, almost like curiosity. I kind of want to know more about this mysterious song. It almost makes me think, and like you're fully aware, so like what you do with the song is actually very intentional, because you almost allude it to being a result of the shepherd, but it's not, and you kind of do, so it's assumed. So like the song actually I think works for me. I think a couple of recommendations. I think from a character perspective, so we have 5 characters right now. So we have, let me think, technically with the Eagles is I think 7 or 8. So we have Dinky and Johnny, who are the main 2. I'm fine with their characters. And then we have William, Suki, and the Forest Guard. And then we have the 2 Eagles and the Shepherd. So I'm fine with the Eagles and the Shepherd. Their characters work. I think Dinky and Johnny's characters work. And then we have William, Suki, and the Forest Guard. So right now, I think the biggest opportunity with the story is I'm not really clear. Suki's personality kind of comes across a little bit. Suki's kind of like compassionate, and then the Forest Guard is kind of like he's kind of like leading the way. I could see that as a children's story of like he's like the position of authority, so to speak. William's character just wasn't very clear to me. And then I know when I had asked and we had talked about it, I know you mentioned that both William and Suki are actually animals, and neither of those came across. I think you mentioned that really early on in the story, but right now what's missing is you're leading a lot of the storytelling through the dialogue. And like sometimes you have really great descriptions with like the songs and like when it pertains to the plot. But what I need descriptions about the characters themselves, right? Right now, I know like there's very little about like Suki. There's very little about William. And then Johnny, you do a good job of setting him up early in the story. But then in the mid and later part, there's like nothing is really happening with the story other than that they're going on a journey. So I would actually recommend on either I would almost recommend on like cutting out one of the characters, whether that's William or Suki. And I think it would almost be stronger from a character development standpoint if it was just like, because I'm thinking about like why they split up, but then clearly he found it was a result of Mr. Shepherd. I'm like the reference at the end of like they want to thank him. One of the questions I asked to you, Carla, is what was the intent of splitting them up, having them split into 2 groups, with Dinky going off with the Forest Guard and Suki, and then William and Johnny going off in the other direction? From a plot perspective, it might actually be more powerful for them not to split off, for them to follow, for them to be together and explore that. The reason being is because Dinky's the protagonist. It feels like she would be more easily affected by the journey by interacting with the shepherd himself. And I think you could still include like the elements of the song, like maybe the song is what happens before he shows up, but I think it would make the journey a little more impactful, because right now what it feels like is Dinky is it feels like the plot happens to Dinky and she doesn't make an active choice in the climax of the story, which is the bike returning. The bike returning happens separate of the protagonist and it happens to her instead of her being actively involved. Now she chooses, right, to let go of the fear because of the song, and like that's good, but that needs to be connected to the bike and her getting the bike back with the eagle. It would make the story a lot more stronger. And this could be done really easily, even by keeping her with the group. I think that might make the overall plot line more resound more, and it would probably make it easier because you have all the characters. It would probably be really strong if because you have Dinky and Johnny. The Forest Guard, you could do the Forest Guard, but it almost feels like it would be more like powerful for between the Forest Guard, William, and Sookie for you to get rid of one of those characters, and then just having either. I mean, you could almost get rid of two, but that would be subjective. I think you should really focus down on either one or two of the characters. If they're animals, then make it clear on the description and every time like they talk, I'm like, what does like this animal speak like? And then that would help develop their character and then give them further make us feel about them. Because the overall story works. Like it feels like an overall children's story, and I like it. It feels like it's like this childlike young adult like coming of age story. I love the names. I love the world. But yeah, that would be my recommendation to make it more impactful to Dinky. So that way, by the time we get to the end of the story, it feels like Dinky overcome her journey and grew, as compared to she overcome her journey as a result of something that she didn't have an active part in. So that would be my biggest recommendation. I like the Eagles. I mean, you could probably even touch on the Eagles a little bit more as antagonists, but the Eagle attack was interesting. Yeah, let's see. Johnny is good. I would almost have Johnny continue to be like the inspirational figure throughout the story because you kind of set him up in the beginning as like trying to inspire her. Like it feels like when it gets like tough, like you should be giving more like, oh, motivational, like when I was your age, this happened. Things like that might help keep because you framed him as the mentor character in the first 3 chapters. I love the ending though. The way that you ending it was really good. So I would say like right now the overall story, the first third of it and the last third of it are working pretty well. You kind of need to focus on that like middle section that it makes a little bit more sense for Dinky's journey. And so I like the thing with the song and the tune. It's interesting. You could even expand on it a little bit more, but overall I think the song's interesting. And just a random note on when it comes to dialogue, not every piece of dialogue needs a speech tag. There's actually opportunities where you can cut out the speech tags when it's clear who's talking. So, like for instance, Sookie gives Dinky a big hug. I'm just so happy you and your bicycle are together again. Me too. And I mean, I guess technically she's you want her to have a massive smile on her face. But you could almost cut this and have her be like, me too. Me three, says William winking. So I think there's some opportunities to cut down on just some of the dialogue tags. And even here, right? Maybe next time we will come look for Mr. Shepherd so I can thank him. Says dang it to John. It's like you could keep that, but then I would get rid of this one because it's obvious that Johnny's responding to her. So yeah, I would just look at the speech tags and for each piece of dialogue you have in your story, asking yourself if without the speech tag, if there was no speech tag for this dialogue, is it clear who is talking? If the answer is yes, get rid of the speech tag. If the answer is no, keep the speech tag. It's a good rule of thumb. Awesome. And that's all that I got for you. I think those are like the main things. Overall, really great work. I think I think the overall opportunities can definitely be improved upon by just making a couple of different choices on how you want to go about it. But that would be my feedback. And I hope this helps. Thanks for sharing this, Carla. I really appreciate you. I always, and I say this, I always love when we get different types of stories and genres, because it really just goes to show just how many different ways of storytelling are out there. And it kind of shows contrast between the different readings. So that was pretty awesome. Okie dokie. And I think with that, my voice is going. So I have to I have to wrap up. I have to put an end to the readings. As much as I want to get to your other readings. I want to say I have about 3 or 4 other ones that are still on the to-do, the reading submission. So if I didn't get to your excerpt, we'll get to it for next Saturday. But we'll one off and I'll let you know. So I wanted to throw that up there. But I just want to say thank you to each of you for joining me today. I really, truly appreciate each of you who are being active in the comments, who are really like sharing feedback and connecting. It's like, that's so cool. Shout out to Mudzerker, Atomic Elf, John. Shout out to Marta, all you guys, Ketan, all of you guys for either submitting and or being involved. Soul, thank you so much. Y'all, each of you is what makes this happen and is what makes this community continue to be improving. So thank you so much for being actively involved. It really means a lot to me. And with that being said, let's see. What do I got? So with that being said, whatever is there to check out next. So as I look into what to watch next, the Creative Right Now podcast. If you haven't checked out the Creative Right Now podcast, you should go watch the first episode immediately. Let's see. I'll pull up the YouTube channel real quick. Let's see, podcasts. Perfect. So you should go check out the podcast. There we go. So the Creative Right Now podcast, this first one, it was really good. It was an interview that I did with Mike Clausen, a published author, and the episode was about writing stories that matter. It has become my most popular stream / podcast. I air it as a live stream, but then it's uploaded and we turn it into a podcast. And that's the way it's packaged. So the Creative Right Now podcast, super exciting. Go check it out if you haven't already, because let's say I got that over on the Kaufman's Corner YouTube channel, because tomorrow we're going to be coming out with the next episode of the Creative Right Now podcast, which will be how to write a short story that bridges fiction with reality. I'm super excited about it. I'm going to be interviewing and sitting down with two other writers and a published author, and who are responsible for leading the magazine KaleidoScript Magazine. So I'm super excited. It's an online magazine. We're going to be talking about what does it look like in developing a short story? And then how are short stories brought to life in an online digital magazine format? It's going to be really great. I'm super stoked for it. So make sure that you tune in for tomorrow. You will be encouraged to come join in the conversation, ask questions. If there's anything that you want to know about getting your story put into a magazine, right? Their next issue is actually being launched tomorrow. So we'll get to dive into it. And especially for all you a lot of you have been working on short stories, perfect opportunities. If you want to get your work out there, always submitting to magazines is always one way of getting your work out there. So super cool. And it will be tomorrow at 2 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, same time that we did today. I'm looking forward to it. It'll be fun. Thanks, John. I appreciate it. Just trying to keep it entertaining. I'm glad that you're trying to help me stay entertained. I appreciate you. Oh, I love it. Let's see. So that's what I got. That's for tomorrow. And That's what I got for you today, writer friends. As always, our story and critique show, 3 hours. My voice is a little done for the day, but it was a great experience. I always have fun doing this stream. And that wraps up our show. So remember, words are wind, but stories are forever. I'm Kauffman, and I'll catch you on the morrow.